Hello everybody, and welcome to the October edition of the Farmer Supply Association Agriculture Report. I'm Randy Klepechka, agronomist with Farmer Supply Association. Well, just want to give a quick update on harvest. We're taping on October the 14th. It hadn't been the best harvest season I've ever seen. It hadn't been the worst harvest season I've ever seen. We've been getting some periodic rains that have kind of slowed us down. We'll get a day or two good to cut, then we'll get a couple days we can't cut, and just kind of things have slowed down and a little bit, but I've seen worse than this. So we're making progress. I guess you could say we're headed in the right direction. Talking about our yields, we've talked the last couple of months about our rice yields being good, and they've held up pretty good. Still hearing a lot of really good rice yields, several in excess of 200 bushels per acre, just a lot of good rice out there. One little hiccup I've heard a little bit lately has been on the Jupiter variety of rice, and I don't know what's going on with it. Jupiter's always been one of our more consistent yielders, but this year I'm hearing some spots here and there where Jupiter's not doing very good. I've heard some reports maybe the narrow brown leaf spot disease, which kind of has been a hiccup in some of our varieties over the last few years. So it may be that. Not really sure if that's it or not, but again, that is a concern because Jupiter's always been so consistent for us. But again, not all the Jupiter fields have been bad, but I've been hearing some reports here and there of some low Jupiter yields. So that's really the only negative thing I've heard. There are some wind storms that went through in spots here and there recently, and so we've got some rice on the ground, and that slowed things down as well. But still, overall, a pretty good rice harvest. I think the milling yields have picked up some as we've got into this harvest. They were pretty bad in places on certain varieties early, but not as bad. Not a great, certainly not a milling yield like last year, but still not too bad. Soybeans, for the most part, really good yields with soybeans. We talked last month about some of these early planted soybeans on some of this good ground. They continue to just give some great yields. Hearing some great yield reports on some of these fields. Some of the other production systems, maybe some average yields, but we're still really hearing some good soybean yields where these guys plant early, have high fertility, and you're really pushing these yields, and we're still hearing some outstanding yields in those situations. So along that line, I think it's very important that if you're wanting to push your soybean yields, if you can get your ground prepared this fall, for planting soybeans next year. I know some fields you just can't do it. They're not going to dry out, but if you've got the opportunity to get some of next year's soybean fields ready for planting right now in the fall, go ahead and take advantage of that. That way you can plant early. Your chances of planting early next spring are better, and almost guaranteed your yield potential is going to be better. You talk to any of these guys that are making great soybean yields, number one thing is always early planting date. So, try to get there if you can. Corn yields, really good. A lot in excess of 200, so a great corn year. Heard some, average yields early, but most of the corn I'm hearing is really good. So yield-wise, it's been a very good harvest so far. Next thing I want to talk about is wheat production. I didn't think we were going to have a lot of wheat in our area this year, but I keep getting calls the last couple of weeks. I've been getting several calls about wheat production. This field that David's planting on right now was planted Tuesday, so we've got quite a bit of wheat been planted over the last week to 10 days, and if we can keep it dry, I think we can get a pretty decent acreage of wheat planted this spring. Economics is not real good this year. The input prices, fertilizer, seed, fuel are all way up, and we thought that would hamper wheat acreage. The wheat price went down just a little bit, also late summer, early spring, so late summer and early fall, so we thought that would hurt wheat acreage. But again, I'm still getting calls, and we're still going to have a decent amount of wheat from those guys that normally plant wheat, I think. Just want to hit a few production items on wheat. Number one, planting date. We're taping again on October 14th, and we're right in that perfect window. I like to see wheat planted between about the 10th of October and the 1st of November, so we're right in there. You get later than that. I've seen good wheat as late as Thanksgiving, but you really got to have a fairly mild, winter and a good condition to get that crop tillering and off to a good early start. Otherwise, those yields start trending down when you get into those November plantings. So, again, try to get it planted the rest of this month. Seeding rate, probably that most of the research has shown about 26 seed per square foot. And of course, that's going to vary your rate depending on the seed size as far as pounds per acre. But you're getting that 80 to 90 pound per acre. That's going to be pretty good seeding rate in most good situations. If you got rough fields, no tilling, getting late, then I think you probably need to up that rate about 10 to 20% over that. But otherwise, 80 to 90 pounds dried is going drilled is going to be a pretty good rate. As far as fall fertilizer, again, we've talked about the fertilizer prices being an issue, so guys are going to want to skimp on that. There's some places you can skimp, places you can't. Nitrogen is a place that you can avoid the need for nitrogen, especially if you're planting in this normal time frame. Now, if you get late up in November, then you may need to add a little bit of nitrogen to increase tillering. If you're planting wheat behind rice, we've got a little of that over in the Whitehall area and maybe a little more, I don't know, but that's mainly where we see that at. Then I think you probably need some fall nitrogen in that case. But otherwise, you can skip the nitrogen. There's not much potash need for wheat. I mean, it needs some, but it doesn't need a lot. If you got a pretty decent level in your soil, you can get by without potash. Or, of course, if you're going to plant beans behind that wheat, you'll need to consider them and get that potash out there for the soybeans. But otherwise, don't worry that much about potash. But phosphorus is one thing that wheat really does like. So let's get those needed phosphorus applications out there. I really think it's a good starter fertilizer to get your wheat off to a good start. Even if you have some decent levels in the field, I would still like to see some phosphorus applied out there. So, probably get 40 to 50 units, 100 pounds of triple superphosphates, 46 units. That's a pretty good fertilizer to get this wheat off to a good start with. Weed control, again, residual herbicides like other crops are very important. So if you've got ryegrass issues in your wheat crop, like to see Zidua or Anthem Flex out there as a delayed pre-treatment. You really don't want to apply a pre-emerge. You want that seed to have sprouted before you put it out there, and once that seed is sprouted, you can make that delayed pre-emerge application of Zidua or Anthem Flex, and that'll give you good ryegrass control, good bluegrass control, and several other weeds that are out there. So again, Zidua or Anthem Flex, delayed pre-emergence. Finally, fall residual herbicides, for guys that have got their ground ready to plant or going to have it ready to plant, get it ready this fall for next spring, especially in those situations. But there's other situations as well where I think a fall residual can pay off for you. Keep those winter weeds from coming up. Don't have all that vegetation out there next spring that you've got to try to take care of, or the soil won't dry out good because you've got all that vegetation out there. So let's think about fall residuals, if that'll fit your program. If it does, then I think that's a good thing for you. As far as the broadleaf weeds out there, those fall, winter broadleafs that we get, Valor's one of the go-to materials. If you can apply some Valor out there, that'll kind of keep those down and where you won't have an issue with those next spring. As far as timing on Valor, probably if the ground gets if we get cool early, like if we get a bunch of 60-degree temperatures maybe before the 25th of October, then I think you need to be looking at possibly getting that or getting that application of Valor out there about October the 25th. If it stays warm till about the 1st of November, then wait till that first week of November to get that Valor out there. So that's kind of, don't put it out there too early. Again, about October 25th, if it's really cool. Otherwise, wait till that first week of November and get that Valor out there. One other situation where residuals can help, and that's with ryegrass. And we see every spring people have more ryegrass than they think, and they ask, what can we do with it? And there's not a lot of good options because Roundup most of it's resistant to Roundup, or Roundup's not very good on it anyway, regardless. So, it's hard to control once you get some size on it. So if we can keep it from coming up, that's a good way of handling it. If you're going to be planting corn, milo, or soybeans next year, then you got several good options. Dual, Zidua, Anthem Flex, all of those are real good on ryegrass. Get those out there, between about after the 15th of October on into early November. Get those materials out there, and they'll do a good job for you if they get activated. And we have a new material that we can use. It's not a new material, but something that has not been labeled for this use before, and that's Command. If you're going to be planting rice next year and you're concerned about ryegrass, Command is a pretty good option right there. You can apply Command out there. The recommended rate is 24 ounces per acre, so that's a pretty good rate, and so you really need to have the need for that to use it. So don't be, if you just got a little bit of ryegrass, maybe don't worry about it. But if you've got severe ryegrass infestations every year, you might want to consider that. On some of the real heavy soils, that's not going to be an issue. You should be fine with that 24-ounce rate. Where there is some concern is on some of our lighter soils, our silt loam soils, especially in Poinsett Cross County and some of eastern Jackson County, where we have these high pH soils, these silt loam soils. Sometimes that high rate of command could be an issue. So I think the company FMC is doing a little research. They're talking about this and see what the recommendation ought to be. They really want to get that rate lowered if they can, to a lower rate than that 24 ounces, because sometimes you get these rates a little too high on some of this thin silt loam soils. It can cause some issues. So again, if you're applying it on heavy soil, I think you're fine. If you're going to apply it on the silt loam soils, then you may call me and we're going to see what the company is going to come up with on this. Again, they're still tossing around some ideas, seeing if they can get that changed. So stay in touch with me if you want to try that, the command on these silt loam soils that are high pH. If you're going to do that, well, let's talk about it before you do it. So that's kind of where we're at right now. If you have questions on any of this, you can contact me through Farmer Supply Association. And this has been Randy Klepeczka with your October edition of the Farmer Supply Agri Report.